The Enterprise has an unscheduled escort. Kern must go to the Memphis sector, and Guinan is willing to come down to level 14 for Worf. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation. Heard of it? Season 4, Episode 26, entitled Redemption. This was written by Ronald D. Moore, directed by Cliff Bole. This was June 15th, 1991. Where were you? We also have a very special guest today, everybody. You are not going to believe this. Gowron himself, Robert O'Reilly, is here. How are you today, Robert?
I'm good.
Also, very quickly, we want to give a very special thanks to Stephen Green and Sean Mouch for sponsoring this episode. Thank you so much, Stephen Green and Sean Mouch. This is for you. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
That was good Gowron stuff you gave us right there.
Yeah. You know, I'll do it without the glasses. I'll do it again. Here we go.
There it is. You did a fantastic job in this episode. I mean, I couldn't peel away from it. It was one of those things where you have to I have to pause it because even though I'm going to walk over here and grab a water real quick, I can't let it ride for that 30 seconds. You know, I need to watch every second of this thing. And that's because you were captivating, riveting, the whole story. I mean, Ronald Moore. What do you remember about this episode?
Well, it was a fabulous episode. It was a two-part, and it was just, and the actors in it. There was a myriad of brilliant actors, and I think the best of the Klingons were there. You hear that, G. Hirschler? Anyway, Tony Todd and Barbara and Gwyneth, Barbara Marsh and Gwyneth Walsh, and it was just a fabulous cast. And it was an exciting show to do because it was a two-parter, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And the storyline was just, I mean, Moore's writing in it was just fabulous. So I had a great time. Memories of it, was, you know, one of my favorite lines was I think Turok says, someday the Duras family will rule the empire. And I say, perhaps, but not today.
Yes.
And it's one of my favorites. The writing in it, so good. It was just great. It was fun. It was a fun show to do in a lot of ways. And hellish, too, because we had to be in makeup and wardrobe for so long, all the hours we had board. And Tony Todd was an amazing actor and just brilliant. I always thought he was the very best of the Klingons. I love to watch him, you know.
You know, you touched on a few things here, but the first thing I want to jump on was the writing. Okay, so obviously this was brilliantly written, so good. Ronald D. Moore really knows what he's doing, always shows that. When you first read this script, I don't know if you can remember back that first feeling when you read this, were your eyes getting big, just like not in character, but just at how great this was, or were you thinking like this is a really juicy role? Do you remember any of that?
Well, yeah. When I first got it, I went, oh, Gowron's going to be here for a while, you know, because he didn't die at the end of the. Well, actually, you know, I get one set, and then you get the other one. You don't get both of them right away. So I was curious, you know, to see if I lived through it, you know, and then I did find out I did live through it, and I knew I'd be around for probably a couple of years, couple of seasons anyway. So Michael Westmore, when I was first becoming a Klingon in the very first show I was in, I think it was, anyway, whatever it was. He said, oh, Bob, it's going to be a life thing. I said, what are you talking about? I'm doing a guest star on Star Trek. And he said, no, it's going to be a little more than that. And then the words came to me, what he was saying, because apparently he knew, some people knew that my character was going to go on and on and on. And those words came to me when I've read the first script, the first Redemption, and I went, "Wow!" I mean, it's fun for an actor to find out you're going to be around for a while. So, because I was a guest star actor, I was going from show to show for years, and a lot of times I would be in a number of shows during a season, but I knew I'd always die at the end, and true to form, even in Star Trek, I died at the end.
Right.
After 2 shows, many shows, but 2 different shows. It's, the joke of the Klingons. When are we going to die?
With honor, of course, though.
Yeah, with honor.
Yes. Well, this episode taps into one of the things that I think Star Trek is one of the appealing things for me about Star Trek, and that is the diplomacy aspect and the going deeper, in-depth dive into another alien's, governance and world affairs. And so I think watching the Klingon story for me is it's so interesting to see how Worf is on a quest to get his restoration of his family name, how you are on a quest, your character's on a quest to gain power. It looks like be a good steward of the power for the Klingon, which is, what we're always looking for is leadership that is going to have the best interests of the people in mind. And so I think that's one of the things we're trying to decipher about Gowron as we watch him, like how trustworthy is he, Yeah. I love the way you act opposite Patrick Stewart. You really hold your gaze on him. You really don't, turn your eyes down away from him. You look him dead in the eye. You give him the entire intensity. And I think that also allows him to bring his performance up as well. So I want to give you kudos for that.
It was really fun watching, acting with Patrick. We really enjoyed each other. It was like we were on the same wavelength. Somehow, sometimes you're a little bit off with the other actor, but with Patrick, I was just like zapped on, and I felt he was too. So we really, really enjoyed each other.
You could see the chemistry. It was locked in. Those scenes in his captain's quarters where you're looking at him and you're asking to see where his allegiance is, and he's trying to find out where your allegiance is, and the whole gamesmanship, the whole chess play. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it was fun working with him. It was the writing is so good in that show. I was truly amazed by both of them, and we had a star cast in that. I mean, we had Whoopi in it, and I mean, I didn't work with her, but she was in it, and Denise Crosby was in it, and it was almost like doing a film. It was great, and the cinematographer. There are moments in that show that the cinematography came out. When they arrived at the end of it, I think it was maybe it was the second one where the camera rises up, and those shots are usually just done in films. I mean, that's an expensive shot because of the crane that you have to use. Stuff like that was just like brilliant.
There were very good choices by Cliff Bole in this episode. I like the close up on the dagger that panned up to your face, and where Worf grabs the tip of the blade of the dagger. I thought that was a great shot. It showed the roof of the ceiling. You don't get to see much ceiling action when you're looking on these sets, but it was just great. One of my favorite lines that you delivered was, "Where did you find him? In a harlot's chamber?" And you had so much fun delivering that line. It looked like you were like, "Oh, I'm going to get this kid," with this Raz right here. And I thought it landed so well.
Moore gave me so much humor lines that you didn't have to. You could play it heavy, but I was looking for a lot of humor in adding on Empire, because I always felt that everybody was too one note as Klingons, and I always felt that, because we're hard drinking, partying group. So you have to have some fun doing that. So I was always looking for that, those lines, and he had them there for me.
And you do that. You mentioned that, but you do that more so than any other Klingon portrayal.
Yes,
when you see, for example, Tony Todd in his rendition, he doesn't really add that much humor in his. It's all straight up, and so is Worf. It's all straight up. Yeah. But you do, like, you'll deliver a punchline in a Klingon way. Like, isn't that funny? And it's like, that is funny.
There's another line. There's another line you said, Bob, that kind of got me there, and it was just a 2-word line. It was impudent wretch, and that could have been delivered so many ways. It could have been delivered angrily, right? But you had the anger simmering below, and you had the vibe of somebody that is looking at an impudent wretch, and you said it with like a smiling sneer, which was such a great choice. Do you remember if you took a few different takes of that, or if you knew when you read that line, this is how I want to deliver it?
There were times where they would let me do that. I forget if that was one of them. But if it's usually in a scene, they won't do it. They won't take it out. But I have come up to a couple of end lines, and I'll say, can I do it a couple of different ways? And most directors, unless time is running out, and that's the thing that used to drive me crazy. When they're going to pull the plug at 2 a.m., and you got a scene that you could do one way or the other, and you want to try to do it so they have a choice, because it's all their choice anyway. And I remember one time, the very last thing I did on Star Trek, I wanted to do the very last line before I died on the very last show I did in Deep Space, and the poor director said, "Bob, we can't. They're pulling the plug in 5 minutes."
You're like, after all these years, I'm dedicated to this.
Getting stabbed over and over again,
Wow. You mentioned Barbara Marsh and Gwyneth Walsh, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about them. I thought they delivered a great performance. We've seen them throughout these years as the Duras sisters. And I haven't gotten a chance to talk with them directly about their experience, but can you tell us a little bit about working with them and, what they were like as actors?
They were fabulous. I mean, they were so much fun too. I mean, the scene that I adore. I mean, I just adore the scene where they've taken Patrick and kidnapped Patrick, and Gwyneth takes her fingernails and does it over his head, scratches over his head, taunting. Yes. I mean, where did she come up with that? I mean, it was just brilliant, because
it was so brilliant.
She just did it, and the director was smart enough to just leave her alone, and then use the close up, to capture it. It was just brilliant, and Barbara's brilliant too. I mean, Barbara's, she's passed away many years ago, but she is such an incredible stage actress for many, many years, and just a brilliant actress. But the two of them together were hilarious. Just a side note story. We got along great, and we worked together great, and had a lot of fun together on the set. And then they emailed me, and they said, Bob, we got the film. We got the next film. We're going to be in the next film. And I wrote back to them. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And they went, "What? Why would you be so?" I said, "Because they're going to kill you off. You're a Klingon."
That's it.
In the films, they never survive. But we had a lot of fun on the road together, because we did a lot of conventions also after that, because they were just incredible actresses together. You know, they were just anyway.
Their chemistry was amazing. I love that scene as well, where she rubs that fingernail over the top of his head, and her sister's like, "Hey, like, slow it down. Like, don't give it away yet. There'll be time for that later."
Yeah, right.
I want to ask you though, because this was the last episode of the 4th season, and I imagine that it's the 2-parter, so they're bringing you back from the beginning of the 5th season. So was this a break in between? Were you filming this at the last end of this 4th season and then waiting the hiatus to be brought back for the 2nd part?
You know, I think that's the way it went. Although I don't really remember, because I was doing so many Star Trek things at that time, because I was doing the CD about the same time. And I think what happened was I did Redemption 1, and then I did the CD, which was 3 weeks of me doing every scene in makeup all day long. And
in makeup?
In makeup.
For a CD?
For a CD?
For a CD. Yeah.
Wow.
Is an audio thing?
Rude.
Why did they need the visual for the audio?
It was not. Well, anyway, it was a film.
Okay.
Maybe it was like CD-ROM or something back then in the 90s.
Okay, yes.
And Frakes directed it, and then
Frakes directed it.
Yeah, and then I went right into the Redemption 2. I think that's the way it happened. I might have it wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it happened. It was 91 or 92. And so I was like burnt. I was like burnt like a toast. I was just, because I had been in makeup, Klingon makeup. You know what it's like, for the. And I had so I in it straight for 6 weeks, and my
God,
deteriorating, and I didn't get much break. When you do Redemption 1 and Redemption 2, you had days you had off, which was great. You would shoot 16 hours, but usually the next day you'd have off. But the CD-ROM, I had no days off, and just so it was. So I think that's what happened. But I wondered the whole time until I got the script, whether I would be killed,
I wonder if it was possibly you're credited as doing the Star Trek: The Next Generation interactive board game. So maybe it was something like that where you were doing clips of you as a Klingon and things like that. And I think I may have had that board game, honestly.
The board game was different. That was directed by anyway, but I was the only one in the board game. So
directed by Les Landau, of course.
Yeah, it wasn't Gowron. It was Les Landau did it, and it was Les and me on the Star Trek set. We were the only actors on it. I mean, I was the only actor on it, and Kavak, and who comes up to want to meet me was probably now I forget his name, but the great scientist of all time, not Einstein, but he was playing
Tesla.
Huh?
Tesla?
No, he was playing. He was playing in a card game next door.
Oh yeah, Stephen Hawking, maybe.
Yes, Stephen Hawking, and he was the big Klingon fan, and he wanted to meet a Klingon, and Worf wasn't around, so they asked if he could come on the set, but they didn't tell me who it was, and so he came on the set, and he just wanted. All I knew is that he wanted to meet me, somebody from the other set. And he came on, and as soon as he spoke, I knew who it was because he spoke through a machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, that's side story of that.
To this day, Stephen Hawking is the only person in Star Trek history, I believe, that has played himself. He was in an episode of Star Trek playing himself. He's the only one that's ever done that, which is a pretty awesome honor.
Yeah, here I've got. Now they didn't have a photography. He wanted a photographer, a photograph with me and a Klingon, and the only thing was the wardrobe guy had it. So here's the picture. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh wow, yeah.
I just happen to have it.
Wow.
Wow.
But it's Kavak, and he's on the bottom, and his nurse is on the top with me.
Wow.
So I just happen to have it here, just, but that was the only camera they had on set, was the Polaroid. So they used that. Interesting.
Wow.
That's so cool that you ended up with one of those.
Memory. Yeah.
Because I mean, that you can't copy those. You know what I mean? That's a Polaroid.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, it was. I call it the mathematical genius of the world with the mathematical idiot of the world.
And the polar opposite.
I was never very good at,
Oh wow! So let me ask you. So this Deep Space Nine is about to come on. I think around the sixth season of Next Generation. So when is the first time you hear rumblings of another series coming up?
You mean Deep Space Nine?
Yeah,
we heard it starting probably about 2 years before, but a lot of people went, no, it's probably not going to happen. It was, rumor mill, rumor monger, and then when I heard about it, we were in Germany. We were doing one of Dirk's shows, FedCon, and we heard the cast. Now Majel was with us, and so Majel. No, we weren't. It wasn't a Dirk's convention. It was a different convention. But anyway, Majel was with us, and she must have known much earlier than that, because she was, she was, married to the man, Gene, and so she just kept quiet, but she was like, yeah, and then she named us the cast because she knew the cast. So, and some of the actors and some of us didn't know the actors, but that was a big deal, and it was a lot of fun learning that and knowing who was in the cast too. That was fun. Also,
any mention at that time that the Klingons would be also integrated in the storyline?
No, that came later. And then all of a sudden, when they said Worf was moving over, I was just like, I was grinning from ear to ear, because I knew, if he was moving over, I was moving over.
Yeah,
I felt it, knew it. And by golly, it happened, and it was like, to get 2 series in a row for me was, wonderful. It was, so it was great. It was,
and it's such a big and storied franchise that just keeps on giving forever. Yeah. And we only have you for a few more minutes, Robert, but I wanted to ask you, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what I was noticing when I'm watching this episode is that you really brought an extra dimension to your character that really is almost non-existent in other Klingons, right? We know Worf, how he is. He's very put in a box. Now, there's a ton of nuance added to that, but we know what Worf acts like. And we have even Gowron. We understand what he's like. Kern, very serious.
Right.
And the thing is, with your character, people can't really put you in a box as like, this is the serious Klingon, or this is the jovial Klingon, or this is the jerk, or you know what I mean? Like, was there a certain intentionality to that, or is that just something you brought to all of your characters? Did you feel he was written in a way that's a little more freeing than how they write most Klingons?
Well, I think the writers kind of picked up on my use of humor, what I call humor, and kind of the, looking at somebody and trying to look through them, but also giving a sense of irony. The very first thing I ever did as a Klingon, I was standing next. It's a shot that nobody really remembers, but I remember it. It's like we're lined up, and I'm next to Patrick, and I just say one word to him, and I look at him and go, human, like most disdainful way anybody say anything about anybody is human, and I think sort of that brought into kind of what I was, and then Jonathan Frakes really encouraged me to make choices that just went all the way. He said it with, use your eyes all the time. In the very first show, and that established Gowron as going really far. Once I knew I was allowed to go far, because a lot of TV shows you were not allowed to, and I'm the kind of actor, put me on a stage and I go all the way, and then I'll do the opposite at the very next moment. I always look for that. And you can't really do that in TV. Directors get afraid of that. And Frakes was not afraid of me doing anything, and so I was able to do that. Once that was established, I think the writers and the other directors, and they pulled me back. Cliff pulled me back at times, and that's cool too. I don't mind being directed at all. I've been a director on stage most of my life, and a stage director, and so I get that. And but it was really to make Gowron fun, interesting, and stay within the character and stay within in the through line of what he wanted for the Empire and himself. But they gave me some great lines to work with. I mean, just fabulous.
Another one, you said, now you must live in your decision. With your decision, like a Klingon. What you tell to Worf,
Yeah.
When he tries to say, "Hey, I wasn't the one," it wasn't me. He's like,
you made the choice.
That's the choice you made. So,
yeah. So
I'm
thank
giving
you.
No pity. Yeah, exactly. Really love this. It made me feel like this kind of episode is where you get Game of Thrones from. If I'm this is the Game of Thrones gamesmanship, politics, backstabbing, positioning for power. This is exactly where. Yeah. But I can completely extrapolate the entire Game of Thrones out of an episode like this.
Well, it was such a great episode. I mean, it really was. It was.
Yeah.
I was in heaven doing it, and then. Just a little anecdote. It was funny walking off a set and then saying hi to somebody, and they don't know who the hell you were, and you were.
You know what else makes this thing work? To Ronald D. Moore's credit, is the stakes are high. Sometimes you get episodes where it's inconsequential, or you don't really feel an imminent threat. But this is high stakes. This is like peace and war is hanging in the balance. This is, this all has to be played out in a political gamesmanship. But, Picard at one moment says, "Hey, let's get the hell out of here. I don't want to even get involved," So, I mean, just all of those things are the perfect notes hit. And also, there's an element of war that's attractive as far as the storylines in Star Trek as well. There's something there where either war is on the brink, or war is happening, or trying to prevent a war. But the idea of that is always one of the big Star Trek themes that is engaging for me as an audience.
Yeah, you're right. The high stakes of the whole show was monumental, and then bringing it back to other characters, and treachery, and I mean, what it was. It was very Shakespearean. It was, a lot of time. I did Edmund in King Lear just before I did Gowron, and I brought a lot of Edmund into Gowron, and it was just that show just epitomized not only the culture of the Klingons, but how we worked as a culture, how we think, how we dealt with others, how we thought about other people, of the universe. That we had a lot of disdain for humans, and actually this show actually made us respect humans a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
We saw in them a warrior. They could be a warrior nation like we were, and that caused respect. Where the Romulans, we were just, there is the trash of the universe,
Yeah.
And I want to also add to one thing that your character does for Worf, and specifically in this episode. There was a moment there where Worf goes onto your ship, and he's now in command of the, defenses. And you suggest, fire the weapons. And Worf says, I wouldn't do that. I think we should do it like this. Wait till their shields are down. I can fire manually. And there was a pause, a contemplation. I can see all of that in your face. It registered in how you put faith and trust in Worf in that moment, where you didn't just dismiss him and use your authority over him. You contemplated the suggestion. You contemplated his motives. You considered his background and experience, all in like such a small moment. But I felt all of that conveyed in that scene. And it does very well to lift up the main characters, which I think, great guest star does. Enhances also the main characters that are featured all the time. So I think you did that for Worf in this episode as well.
Thank you. Yeah. It was fun working with Michael. Always fun working with Michael.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, this has been so much fun. Man, oh man, do we appreciate you and your work and you being so gracious with your time and joining us today. And the fact that you're wearing a freaking Klingon hat. That is cool as hell right now, honestly.
Yes, it is.
But Robert O'Reilly.
And in Australia made this for me. An elderly lady, she stitched it by hand, and it was like, and I got it when I went to Australia. So I only wear it at special occasions.
That is a warrior's gift, to be sure. There is no way around that. Well, Robert O'Reilly, thank you very much. We really appreciate you, man. Right. And everybody at home, stick around because we've got a little bit more on this episode. We're going to heap more praise on Robert behind his back in just a moment. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.